Complaining about your Monday morning commute? Think your boss is the worst? Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because today we're diving into the absolute worst jobs in human history. Jobs so nightmarish, so dangerous, and so downright disgusting that they'll make you want to kiss your current workplace on the mouth. From literally swimming in human waste to having your jaw rot off from toxic fumes, these aren't just bad jobs. They're historical horror stories with paychecks attached. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never complain about overtime again. So grab your safety goggles and maybe a barf bag, because we're about to explore 10 jobs that make modern work look like a luxury spa vacation. Let's kick things off with number 10. And fair warning, this one's about to get messy real quick. Meet the Fuller, the unsung heroes of ancient laundry day. Picture this, you're in ancient Rome, and you need your toga cleaned. No washing machines, no detergent, no problem. Just take it to your friendly neighborhood fuller, who will literally stomp on your clothes in a vat of stale human urine. That's right, folks. Urine was the detergent of choice for over 1,000 years. The ammonia in aged pee was perfect for removing stains and whitening fabrics. Fullers would collect urine from public urinals. Yes, that was a thing. Let it ferment for days, then strip down and dance the cleaning jig on your Sunday best. But wait, it gets worse. They'd also use fermented fish guts, rotten eggs, and even human brains as cleaning agents. Imagine explaining that career choice at a dinner party. Oh, what do I do for work? Well, I dance naked in pee-soaked clothing while covered in fish guts. It's very fulfilling. The smell was so horrific that fullers were literally banned from living within city limits in many places. Talk about bringing your work home with you. Coming in at number 9, we have the tanner. And if you thought the fullers had it rough, wait until you hear about these leatherworking legends. Tanners transformed animal hides into leather using a cocktail of chemicals that would make a modern hazmat team weep. We're talking about soaking animal skins in solutions of dog feces, yes, dog poop mixed with urine, lime, and tree bark for months at a time. The process was called puring, and it required tanners to regularly check the rotting hides by, wait for it, reaching their bare hands into the fermenting fecal soup to test the texture. Nothing says quality control like elbow-deep exploration of decomposing animal matter marinated in canine excrement. The smell was so intense that medieval cities literally banned tanneries from operating within miles of populated areas. Tanners were social outcasts who couldn't even find dates because the stench had permanently bonded with their skin. Medieval Tinder would have been rough for these guys. But here's the kicker. They were constantly exposed to anthrax, which could kill them through skin contact alone. Many tanners developed wool sorter's disease, a deadly form of anthrax that basically liquefied their internal organs. All for the privilege of making leather pants that probably still smelled like a barnyard explosion. Sliding into number 8, and I do mean sliding, we have the Leech Collector. Because apparently someone had to gather the slimy medical marvels of the 1800s. Back when doctors thought balancing your humors was legit medicine, leeches were worth their weight in gold. These blood-sucking superstars were the cure-all for everything from headaches to hysteria. But someone had to catch them, and that someone was usually a desperate soul willing to wade into swamps and ponds. Here's how it worked. Leech collectors would roll up their pants, wade into leech-infested waters, and use their own legs as bait. They'd stand perfectly still while dozens of leeches attached themselves to their skin, slowly draining their blood. Once the leeches were nice and full, they'd carefully remove them and store them for sale. But wait, there's more. Many collectors suffered from severe anemia because they were literally being drained of blood multiple times a week. Some passed out from blood loss and drowned in the very swamps where they worked. Others developed infections from the constant wounds and, well, let's just say medieval healthcare wasn't exactly equipped to deal with sepsis. The really twisted part? The job paid so little that most leech collectors had to supplement their income by collecting more leeches. It was a vicious, blood-sucking cycle literally. Digging into number 7, and yes, that pun is absolutely intended, we have the Resurrectionist, also known as the body snatcher. Because apparently grave robbing used to be a legitimate career path. During the 18th and 19th centuries, medical schools desperately needed cadavers for anatomy lessons, but legal corpses were about as rare as a parking spot at the mall during Christmas. Enter the Resurrectionist entrepreneurs of the afterlife who specialized in midnight shopping trips to local cemeteries. These nocturnal merchants of the macabre worked in teams, using specialized tools to dig up fresh graves within hours of burial. They had to work fast, decomposition was bad for business, and angry mobs with pitchforks were even worse for their health. But here's where it gets really twisted. They couldn't just steal the whole body. Taking the corpse was a felony, but taking just the body without clothes or jewelry was only a misdemeanor. So they'd strip the dead naked and leave the valuables behind. Talk about having professional ethics. The job came with occupational hazards that would make your HR department have nightmares. Angry families with weapons, diseases from handling decomposing bodies, and the constant threat of being caught and beaten to death by mobs. Plus, imagine trying to explain mysterious shovel collections and the persistent smell of formaldehyde to your neighbors. On the bright side, they never had to worry about workplace small talk. How was your weekend, Jim? Oh, just robbed 3 graves and delivered Mrs. Henderson to the medical school. The usual. Striking into number 6, we have the Match Girls. And their story will absolutely light a fire under your appreciation for workplace safety regulations. In the late 1800s, match factories employed thousands of young women to hand-dip wooden sticks into white phosphorus, a chemical so toxic it glowed in the dark and could literally melt your face off. These brave ladies worked 12-hour shifts in poorly ventilated factories, handling millions of matches daily. White phosphorus was incredibly unstable. It could ignite from friction, body heat, or sometimes just because Tuesday felt like a good day for an explosion. Factory fires were common, and workers regularly suffered burns from accidental ignition. But that wasn't even the worst part. Long-term exposure caused phossy jaw, a condition where the phosphorus literally rotted their jawbones from the inside out. It started with toothaches, progressed to glowing green pus oozing from their gums, and ended with their entire jaw crumbling away like a stale cookie. The pain was excruciating, the smell was unbearable, and the disfigurement was permanent. Many victims couldn't eat solid food and faced social ostracism. The lucky ones died quickly from the infection. The unlucky ones? Well, let's just say they had a lot of time to regret their career choices. The good news? The Match Girls of London went on strike in 1888, and their activism eventually led to the banning of white phosphorus. Sometimes the worst jobs create the best revolutionaries. Plunging into number 5, literally, we have the Gong Farmers of medieval England. And no, they weren't growing musical instruments in fields of agricultural harmony. In an era before indoor plumbing, human waste had to go somewhere, and that somewhere was usually a stone-lined pit called a cesspit. When these pits overflowed, which happened frequently because medieval people ate a lot of fiber, someone had to clean them out by hand. Enter the Gong Farmer, named after the Old English word gong, meaning to go. These brave souls would descend into pits filled with decades of accumulated human waste, armed only with buckets, shovels, and presumably a complete lack of sense of smell. The job could only be performed at night, partly for public decency, but mostly because daylight would have revealed exactly how horrific the working conditions were. Picture trying to shovel liquid nightmare in complete darkness while standing waist-deep in a cocktail of every bathroom visit in the neighborhood for the past 20 years. The health risks were unimaginable. Toxic gases could cause instant unconsciousness, leading to drowning in sewage, which is definitely not how anyone wants their obituary to read. The walls could collapse without warning, burying workers alive in... Well, you get the picture. But here's the twist. Gong farmers were actually well paid for their troubles. They made about 6 times more than regular laborers. The downside? They were legally required to live outside city limits and could only work in their profession. Once you went gong, there was no going back. Waking up at number 4, we have the Knockerupper, the human alarm clocks of the Industrial Revolution. And trust me, hitting snooze wasn't an option. Before alarm clocks were affordable, factory workers needed someone to wake them for their shifts. Enter the Knockerupper, armed with a long stick and the responsibility of banging on hundreds of windows every single morning at ungodly hours. These early morning entrepreneurs would patrol the streets starting at 3 a.m., using long sticks, pea shooters, or even soft hammers to rap on specific windows. They had to memorize who needed waking when, which windows belonged to which workers, and how persistent each client needed them to be. But here's where it gets dangerous. They worked in complete darkness, navigating cobblestone streets slick with ice, horse manure, and whatever Victorian-era horrors the night had deposited. Falls were common, frostbite was frequent, and angry customers sometimes threw chamber pots at them. Plus, they faced the ultimate philosophical paradox. Who woke up the Knockerupper? Some used candle clocks, others relied on church bells, and a few hardy souls just never went to bed. Imagine explaining that sleep schedule to your doctor. The really tragic part? Many Knockeruppers were elderly or disabled people who couldn't do physical labor but still needed income. They'd shuffle through freezing streets every morning, sustaining entire communities' work schedules while barely earning enough to survive themselves. And you thought your morning commute was rough. At least your alarm clock doesn't judge you for hitting snooze 17 times. Climbing into the top 3, we have Chimney Sweeps, and this job was so horrific it literally changed child labor laws forever. During the Industrial Revolution, every building needed heating, which meant thousands of chimneys that required regular cleaning to prevent fires. The problem? These chimneys were designed for smoke, not humans. Many flues were only 9 inches wide and filled with sharp turns and scalding surfaces. The solution was as heartbreaking as it was practical. Use children. Boys as young as 6 were bought from orphanages and trained as climbing boys. They'd be sent up chimneys that were often still warm from recent fires, scraping soot with their bare hands in pitch black, suffocating spaces. The health effects were devastating. Constant inhalation of soot caused chimney sweep's lung, a form of cancer that was essentially a death sentence. But that wasn't even the worst part. Many boys developed chimney sweep's cancer, a scrotal cancer caused by soot accumulation. This was literally the first occupational cancer ever identified by medical science. Boys regularly died from getting stuck in flues, suffocating from smoke inhalation, or falling from rooftops. Others were burned alive when masters lit fires to encourage faster climbing. Some were deliberately kept malnourished to ensure they'd fit in the narrowest chimneys. The public outcry eventually led to the Chimney Sweepers Act of 1834, but enforcement was poor. It took decades of activism and multiple laws to finally end the practice. These children literally died to heat London's homes, and their sacrifice eventually sparked some of the world's first child protection laws. Glowing into number 2, we have the Radium Girls, young women whose tragic story literally glows in the dark and changed workplace safety forever. In the early 1900s, radium was considered a miracle element. It glowed with ethereal beauty and was marketed as a health tonic. Watch factories hired hundreds of young women to paint radium-based luminous paint onto clock and watch dials, making timepieces that glowed in the dark. The work required incredible precision, painting tiny numbers on watch faces using brushes with tips so fine they could only be shaped by licking them. The supervisors taught the girls to lip point their brushes, meaning they'd lick the radium-covered bristles hundreds of times per day to maintain the perfect tip. What the companies knew, but the workers didn't, was that radium was lethally radioactive. Every time these young women licked their brushes, they were ingesting a substance that would literally eat them alive from the inside out. The effects were nightmarish. Their bones became so radioactive they glowed in the dark. Their jaws rotted away, their teeth fell out, and their bones became so brittle they'd break from simple movements. Many died agonizing deaths as the radium destroyed their bone marrow and organs. But these brave women fought back. The Radium Girls sued their employers in landmark cases that established workers' rights to sue for damages from occupational diseases. Their glowing bones literally became evidence in court. Their bodies were living proof of corporate negligence. Their sacrifice led to modern occupational safety regulations and workers' compensation laws. Every safety meeting, every workplace protection you have today exists partly because these women died to hold corporations accountable. And finally, claiming the number 1 spot for the absolute worst job in history, the medieval plague doctor during the Black Death. Because apparently, Someone thought treating the most deadly pandemic in human history with a bird mask and a stick was a solid career move. Picture this. It's 1347, and the Black Death is literally ending civilization as we know it. 1/3 of Europe's population is dying horrifically, and someone has to treat the victims. That someone was the plague doctor, dressed in a leather robe and the now iconic bird-like mask filled with herbs that were supposed to filter bad air. Their medical toolkit included bloodletting, drilling holes in skulls, and rubbing mercury on open wounds. Their diagnostic method was literally examining patient urine and comparing it to color charts. Their treatment success rate? Approximately 0% with a margin of error of 0%. Plague doctors had a life expectancy measured in weeks, not years. They were walking into certain death every single day, treating patients with a disease that killed 60% of infected people in the most gruesome ways imaginable: black boils, internal bleeding, and delirium. They were complete social outcasts, literally walking symbols of death. Families would flee when they saw plague doctors approaching. They couldn't have normal relationships, couldn't go to public spaces, and were essentially living ghosts walking through dying cities. But here's what makes them incredible. They did it anyway. When society was collapsing and everyone else was hiding, these individuals walked directly into the apocalypse with primitive medical knowledge and zero chance of survival, trying to help people who were beyond help. They were the ultimate first responders, facing an impossible situation with inadequate equipment and absolute certainty of death, but showing up anyway because someone had to try.